Francis, to you, busy day here. We just heard from the Beige Book. We heard about the tariff reprieve. We were talking about economic uncertainty just a little while ago. What are the big points for you?
Another example that the uncertainty around tariffs is already in the data. We saw it with a surge of imports. We've seen it with consumer confidence. We've seen it with inflation expectations. And now the Fed getting incremental information that companies are already increasing prices. So we may be getting news today that, hey, we may get a 1-month reprieve on autos. That's good. That's probably the sector economists are most worried about. But this uncertainty in and of itself is a tax on the U.S. economy. And I bet you every economist across America right now is downgrading growth and upgrading inflation expectations.
It feels, Adam, like a tax on the American investor's psyche. Because CNBC in the morning on Squawk Box will say tariffs are back on, the markets tank. Then you got Lutnick or somebody comes out, or we get this headline, the tariffs are off or they're delayed, and the markets, to Kelly's point, are soaring. What's our long-term strategy? How do we get through? I'm not going to say it's noise. It's bigger than that. But yeah. I think you get what I'm going
I do get it. And look, they're playing with our emotions as investors, right? And so I think it'll be interesting to see if we could hold on to these gains into the close this time, since we couldn't yesterday. I think we will this time. But this is the environment we're going to be in for the foreseeable future. We know that the topic of tariffs aren't going away. We know that March 12th is coming up, April 2nd with the reciprocal tariffs. Beyond that, call it the second half of the year, we believe that volatility could subside and we can actually get this catalyst to move higher. That could come in the form of tax reform. Now, ultimately, we got to get through this period first. And I equate it to what I tell my kids. You have to finish your vegetables before you can have dessert, right? And this is some of that near-term pain that we're going to have to deal with.
How can you get your pudding if
I was going to say, I'd give it up. I just say you can just have dessert. Just have dessert.
It's a battle. Yeah. It's a battle.
I'm going to quote Francis Donald to Francis Donald. This is what you wrote. As much as we expect the U.S. to remain the leader of the economic pack, thank you, we have rising concerns about the downside risks for growth. So how much downside risk for growth is there in the United States if these tariffs actually happen?
What matters is how long they're in place for. If we get 3 days of tariffs, hey, I'm not downgrading everything. Around the 3-month mark is when you're going to start to see material downgrades to growth. But you know what, Brian? I'm more worried about the inflation side for the United States right now because we were already running too hot on inflation. There's room on growth. We had 2% growth for 2025. Hey, if we get down to 1.5, it's not going to break anything. But 3% inflation or higher, that puts the Fed in a real difficult situation, especially with the unemployment rate wrong. Watch the inflation side here, not the growth side.
What? You know what we've been talking about, and what the narrative that's going around, and you can dodge this question, Adam. Don't worry.
Okay.
Is there a part of you, any just quiet little part of you that thinks Scott Bessent's a smart guy, Howard Lutnick's an extremely smart guy? Like, they know, I think, what they're doing. They're not amateurs at this game. Is there any part of you that thinks that this is being done on purpose? Try to force the Fed's hands, slow things down, do it now when you've just started your presidency.
Look, I mean, I think that speaks to the idea of, is there there may not be a Trump put, maybe there is, but is there a Fed put, and is that strike price a little bit higher?
So, but just, I want to jump in on my own self, because a lot of our listeners and viewers may think Sullivan's finally lost it. He's finally gone insane. No. We talk about, when you're a new CEO, you're a CEO of a company, you take over. You know what new CEOs often do? They dump all the stuff out at the beginning of their term, right? It's painful, it's ugly, it's stupid, but they get it all out of the way so that down the road, that detritus, and there's a part of me that wonders, is the White House doing the same thing?
They very well could be. It'll be really interesting. We've already seen expectations for Fed cuts to move up. So now we're looking at possibly mid-year, potentially 3 this year. I would defer to Francis on this, but I think that as we're talking more and more about stagflation, that obviously, if you force the Fed's hand, that brings the stagflation risk even higher and creates an additional risk of a policy error.